Right, I've got a question for you. When you're hitting short shots around the green, I mean, I suppose that is the best place to hit short shots, really. Do you always use the same club no matter what the shot? Or do you kind of chop and change and hit like a 7-iron 1 minute, a 9-iron for a different type of shot, and then sort of a more lofted club like your lob wedge or whatever, depending on the sort of situation that you're faced with? Let me know in the comments down below, and also tell me what your handicap is, because I'm quite interested to see how sort of different golfers of different levels approach this. So I was taught years ago to kind of get the ball rolling like as quick as you can. So if you can, like, use a 7-iron to chip with, then use that. Obviously if you need to kind of carry the ball a little bit further, then maybe use like a 9-iron or a wedge, but only really use your sort of lob wedge, like if you absolutely have to, kind of get it up and get it stopping quickly. And that tactic has worked all right for me, I would say. Like, my short game is pretty good. It's probably one of the strongest parts of my game. But I remember years ago when I very first started playing golf, I just used to use my sand wedge for every shot from sort of within, I don't know, 60 yards. And it felt so simple. Like, I never really thought about what trajectory I was trying to hit or where I was trying to land it or any of that stuff. I just grabbed my sand wedge, which was only like the one that came with my iron set. It wasn't even like a specialist wedge. I just grabbed that and it just felt like really easy. I just kind of felt like I was sort of throwing it underarm. And I mean, I might be remembering it wrong, but I seem to remember hitting a lot of really good short shots. Just being eaten by a mosquito. Anyway, the reason I started thinking about this again is a conversation I was having with Liam Robinson, the Challenge Tour player, when we were together the other day. You were saying that you're not someone who likes to kind of use different clubs around the green all the time. No. What do you use? 60. 60 for pretty much everything? Pretty much everything. Even if you've got to hit like a sort of, or you want to hit a low runny chip, you'll use a 60? I still use a 60, mate, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's always just been, I don't know, I think it was, I can't remember what book it was that I read, but it had a quote from Jack Nicklaus in there. And he said that basically when you're on tour, like, most people only use one club. When you're on tour, there's not many guys that actually use anything other than one wedge. Yeah. Just learn. I know Shane Lowry does it, doesn't he? Yeah, he does, yeah. I suppose you just kind of become best friends with that one wedge then, don't you? Yeah, like, well, even kind of Mickelson to a big level, like he hits his 60 for most of his shots, and I think most of the guys do. And I've got to be honest, I think it comes from the way that you practice as a kid, or like practice in the way growing up. You go on a chipping green with your mates, you don't go and change club every time you hit one when you're having a competition and stuff. You just get used to practicing with the same club all the time. Like, I know how this club feels. Do you know what I mean? I know what the bounce feels like. I know I know how to make it do what I want it to do. Yeah. Whereas just to go and put like a 9-iron in my hand, it's like I've never played before. Like, I physically, if you asked me to hit a 9-iron now and said I had to hit that shot with it, I'd probably struggle because I don't know what it feels like. Yeah, that's interesting. And would you say that most people, like, say on tour, do that with their most lofted club, or do some people use, like, say the 54 or whatever? Again, I've got to be honest, I couldn't speak for anybody else, but it could be their 54, it could be their 52, it could be their 60. Some people don't even carry a 60. Yeah, but if you were coaching someone and they were going to go down that path of using one club for everything, you kind of let them just choose. Whichever ones you're most comfortable with. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be your most lofted. It doesn't have to be 60, no. Yeah, alright, wicked. Yeah. I felt like what he said does make a lot of sense. So if you always use the same club, you're racking up a lot of shots with it. So if you practice with it, you always use it on the course, then say if you do that for a month, you've obviously hit a lot of shots with that club, whereas if you chop and change, you've hit far fewer shots with each club. So then when you kind of come to pull it out to hit a shot, like in a competition or whatever, a match when it matters, what would you rather have? A club that you've only hit like a few chip shots with, or one that you've hit tons of chip shots with? I've got a really professional and snazzy visual demonstration of this, so I'll show you that now. Okay, so what I've got here is a piece of paper and a bowl of dog food. You have to bear with me on this. And also, thank Simba for his patience, because I'm sure he just wants his dinner, but instead he's got to wait for me to stop dicking around. Won't be a minute, mate. Won't be a second, mate. Say hello. Simba, what's your approach to the short game? Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah. Oh, my piece of paper's a bit creased. Right, so on this piece of paper, I'm going to write 7-iron, 9-iron, wedge, I don't know, gap, wedge, Sand, wedge. Can you even read this? I haven't really planned this. And lob wedge. Okay. So the point is, this is how many short shots, either in practice or on the course, you're going to hit in the next month. So you could either hit some with 7-iron, some with 9-iron, some with wedge, so lost a bit, some with gap wedge, some with sand wedge, some with lob wedge. That's one option. Or imagine over the next month you hit every single short shot in practice and on the course with your lob wedge. Now next time you hit a shot with your lob wedge, which option do you think is going to make you better with that lob wedge? It's going to be this one. I don't think that made any sense. I've got my hands covered in dog food, but the good news, mate, is it's dinner time. Hey Simba, say hello. Dinner time, bud. What do you think? Lob wedge? But on the flip side, some people say that it's actually simpler to use the same technique for every shot and just change the club. So obviously you make the same motion with a 7-iron or like your pitching wedge or more lofted club or whatever, and the fact that you've got a different loft on the club is what will change like how far the ball flies and how far it runs out. I can sort of see that argument as well. So Liam also showed me this really cool thing that he does that means that he can hit different types of shots with his 60 degree. So I filmed that in a video which will be coming up tomorrow. But in the meantime, have a think, like if you were only going to use one club for all of your short shots from say inside like 60 yards, which club would you go for? For me, I think it would be either my 54 or my 58 degree, but I'm going to kind of have a little experiment with both of them, decide which one I feel most comfortable with, and just for like the next week or two, I'm going to try just hitting all of my shots with that one club and see if that works out better than chopping and changing all the time. But in the meantime, I asked a few other people, so good players basically, people off scratch or better, and some pros for their opinion on this. In fact, obviously you've been on the channel before, haven't you?
I've been on the channel before.
People remember this from the glory days of our epic match.
Apart from Ad Skinhead last time, near enough.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And no glasses and anything.
If you don't remember Drew from that, then this is Drew Farrell, PJ Professional. Where do you stand on the whole sort of one club versus chop and change debate?
I think of it both ways, personally. I like the idea of being able to use a few different clubs and be versatile in that way. However, I also like the use of one club, especially in practice, because I think it's great to be versatile in order to control your flight with one club. It's great practice. It's a good skill to have in your arsenal to be able to apply to your full shots as well. So I think it's good to be able to hit some flat ones, some high ones, mid trajectory. It's good to have that in your locker with every club in your bag. So I think doing it with your pitching is a good place to start, so you can control your ball flight as good as you can.
Do you feel like people don't do that enough?
Yes. I don't feel people practice well at all, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to structure with their short game, in terms of picking landing spots, things like that, and obviously trying to pitch it in the same place with different trajectories, obviously, and they'll in turn be able to learn how the ball rolls out and releases in certain ways as well. Yeah, and if you're out playing, obviously like in a tournament or whatever, would you be mixing it up quite a bit from shot to shot based on the circumstances? You wouldn't just have a go-to club? No, I mean, I think I have a club I prefer, which a lot of people do have. I'll always prefer to use my 54 or my 60 around the green if I can. I think lofts really, for my preferences, I prefer people to use loft because I think they can actually physically hit the ball harder with more loft, which I think makes a more committed action for most people as well. But yeah, if I'm playing links golf and I do have quite a long shot, obviously I'll go to something less lofted. But yeah, of my preference, I'd prefer to use one of my wedges, either my 54 or my 60. Wicked. Cheers, bro. No problem. Pleasure. Mark Jackson, head professional at Birdie Park Golf Club in Stamford. Where do you stand on the whole one club versus multi-club debate?
I would always use different clubs for different shots. If I'm playing a low shot into a green, a chip and run shot, I'd play a 9-iron back of my stance. Sometimes play a pitching wedge back of my stance. You can vary it with an 8-iron depending on where the pin is. I think that's really quite significant. If you've got a front pin position, I would play a 9-iron or a wedge to bump it in there. If it's at the back of the green, I may play a less lofted club like an 8-iron, so that I get more release with the chip and run shot.
And under what circumstances would you get out, like say your most lofted club, beat your lob wedge? Or
again, obviously trying to stop the ball. If I've got an obstacle to go over, I tend to play that. If I'm coming out of thickish grass at times when I've got to get the ball up, when you want to spin the ball. But I'm very much more, probably a bit old school in a way, but I'm very much more, when the ball's running, you've got actually more of a chance of holding the shot.
Yeah, so you prefer to see the ball running because then it's got more chance going in. And are there any other benefits to doing that rather than say hitting your lob wedge for everything?
I just think you're more consistent. I always think lob wedges are a high tariff club. I think people get what we call lob wedge-itis, particularly your club golfer will go out there with his new 60-degree club and you'll see him playing it from everywhere. And I think you have to have an imagination with golf. I use this sort of visual thing. If I was throwing a ball, if I was throwing up and over, then I've got an obstacle to go over. If I'm sort of rolling the ball, I think to me that's a good way and a good feel of where I want the ball to land. Sort of, and the way the ball rolls out. It's how you see it, I think, and it's like with that chipping green, we do north, south, east, and west. Yeah. And we'll play 3 different clubs to 3 different pins, and then you work out what's your success rate.
So you hit different clubs to the same pin.
Yeah. Right. You'd mark it. Say, for instance, 3 balls with 60. Yeah. 3 balls with 50. 3 balls with 9-iron, and over a period of time you'd find out which you're better at. So you get some feedback, and you might think that your favourite club is your lob wedge, and you might think you're best with it, but you're actually probably better with something else.
So you sort of track those scores so you can actually make an informed decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, obviously weather conditions vary as well, but to me it's about having an imagination, being able to see the shot and then play it with a number of options that you have.
Yeah, wicked.
Nick Harris here. I'm a +3 golfer. And I fall into the category of utilising a variety of clubs to chip around the green. You're not necessarily going to want to use a lob wedge to play a chip and run with. And then again, you're not necessarily going to want to use a 9-iron to play a flop shot. So you need to have a variety of different shots with different clubs to really hone in your short game skills around the green.
So I was taught from a very young age just to use one club around the greens. Forget all the different kind of shots that you can create with wedges and 9s and 7-irons and 6-irons. I was told back in those days to use a 56 degree at all times. Open the club face, bunker shots, sand shots, chip and runs, low top spinning ones, check shots, just the whole range of shots with the one club. So you get completely comfortable with knowing what it does off the club face. And you kind of, in the end, you end up trying to hit it out the toe so it runs a bit further, sometimes out the sweet spot, depending if you want that check shot, sometimes even a little bit out the hill. You can close the club face down, hit high ones and low ones, and just really get to feel with this one club. Because the way I look at it is, if you're around the green and suddenly you're going to pick out a 5-iron or a 7-iron, which you very rarely practice on the practice greens. I mean, even when you see the tour pros, they're very rarely stood there hitting 200 with a 5-iron. They don't. They use chip shots, bunker shots, and just kind of, you want to get used to that one club and the feel that the club comes off at. Because it's a bit like having 7 different putters in the bag, and 6 of them you very rarely use. You don't really know how heavy or how the distance control, what's going to happen with those. And it's exactly the same, I believe, with the short game. A bit like Luke Donald, there's a lot of guys who do this, just reach for the 60 every single time. I use the 60. I do carry other wedges, but this is the one I will take from just off the green for everything I do. And I'm going to explain a couple of the shots that I do with this club now. Okay, so let's just say we've got a 60 degree, we've got a little kind of a low chip shot that we maybe don't want to spin too much. All I'm going to do is very shallow hands, not break the wrist too much. The other great part about having very little wrist hinge there is you don't have to actually judge where your strike pattern is on the golf ball itself. So you can almost hit it an inch behind the ball and still get a nice little bit of distance to what you're aiming at, as opposed to cocking the wrist quite a lot, hitting down into it steeply behind the ball and duffing the ball, or even blading it. That's fine if you're off scratch or better, because you're hitting loads of those shots and you can time that. For everybody else, nice shallow hands, not too much wrist break. So here's the first one. So nice and even weight, a bit like the putt. We're just going to use a bit of a pendulum, and you'll see, even if it's 60 degrees, it's going to come out nice and low. And that's perfect. Why would we ever want anything lower than that? And that's a 60 degree. And that is just because I just kept my hands nice and quiet, nice and shallow at the bottom of the swing, not too much wrist cock. Okay, and this is your standard 60 degree lob shot. I'm going to aim to the left. I'm going to put my my club face aiming off to the right in the corner, swing across it just slightly. There we go. So from 5 feet, you can just check one really quick there with that. But more importantly, it's getting used to it and getting used to that one club. So for me, it's all about the one club. Absolutely specialise in that one club. Get completely comfortable with it. Hit all kinds of shots. I mean, one shot could be holding the club face nice and closed, hooding the club face a little bit, and literally just a really low check spinner that's going to run up a green. That's absolutely, for me, I've got much more control over that than I have hitting a 5-iron and not knowing it, because I don't practice those shots that much. And how many times do I actually get to have to hit one of those? Whereas with this, you're always going to hit it. You know, you're always going to have that shot where you're just off the green and you're going to chip it, and it's nearly always this. If you go back through your stats, I bet you your wedge shot, your 60 or your whichever your main chipping club is, I bet you hit that one more than most clubs in your bag, other than the putter obviously. And so use that, you know, get used to that and work with that. So that's my key. One club, mine's a 60, but one club for all your short shots. Get used to it.
I'm going to do a bit of practice with like my 54 and 58 degree wedge, see which one I sort of seem to be best with, and then I'm going to sort of for the next week or two only use that sort of for all my short shots in practice and on the course, and see how that goes compared to chopping and changing like I normally do.
Good shot.
Right.
I do want to make it clear that I'm not saying that using one club, like always using your lob wedge around the green, is the key to a better short game and being a better player. Because also there's a bit of kind of chicken and egg here. Like, I sort of feel like it's all well and good for those really good players to use their lob wedge for every shot because they're so good, so they can manipulate it, they're very confident hitting it from all kinds of lies and all sorts of shots. Whereas if you're not so confident with your short game, you could argue that if you hit like a sort of bad chip with a 7-iron, that's not going to be as costly as if you tried to hit it with a lob wedge. So yeah, obviously I'm not giving you like a concrete answer, because ultimately there isn't one. Like, different players do different things and make it work for them. I guess what I'm hoping is that the video will at least get you thinking about this a little bit more, maybe encourage you to kind of experiment, therefore practice your short game a little bit more, and you might decide that the way you've always done it is actually what's best for you, but at least you'll be making like an informed decision. So there you go, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit like if you liked the video, and if you didn't like the video, then try and hit a flop shot with your 4-iron inside your glass windowed conservatory. I'll see you in the future.